The money for those law libraries are actually come from adoptions and certificates of certiorari and other types of legal filings and pleadings where fees are assessed, and therefore to provide a law library not just for the attorneys but for the citizens. Ours in Brunswick and Glenn counties in the public library. I had originally looked at bringing a bill to look at maybe reducing some of those fees, because what's happening, we've gone to electronic Westlaw, LexisNexis, and that sort of thing, and it's cheaper than standalone books. I decided not to do that because at this time I was told by Chairman Willard that there are still some counties in Georgia that have the standalone books and they're more expensive. But what we also found, and I'm asking you essentially to audit me, I serve on a law library, and there was no requirement under law for an accounting, and there are very specific things that the Law Library Committee can spend their money on. And we're talking, in some cases, a fair amount of money. In Glenn County in 2015, for example, we were around $250,000. McIntosh, I think, had $70,000. I checked a few. So I think it's a good idea. We did make one change. This has the support of the ACCG and the Superior Court Clerks of Georgia. We made one change. I was calling for an accountant, CPA, to do it, and they suggested, and I think it was a good suggestion, I actually got it from a judge up in Savannah, what if they already have a county accountant on staff, let them do it, it would save money, and that makes sense to me. So that is essentially the essence of the bill, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Representative. I have number 10. Is that, is it? Okay, I'm sorry, I just can't count over there. Yes, sir, Representative, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So you said there was a change. So the audit would be performed by the internal auditor or the certified public accountant. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, Representative. They could. The Law Library Committee could pay for a CPA, but if the county already has a lawyer, an accountant, we thought it would be cheaper to allow them to use that if they wanted to. It made sense.
Okay, because typically when you speak of an audit, it would be an external entity, I guess, an external auditor versus an internal auditor providing financial statements to them.
We tried to give them a little latitude. We had county accountant or internal auditor or CPA.
Okay. So what, the only thing when I think of audit, it would be, a review I could see by an internal body, but when you start talking audits, you typically want an independent third party. Even though the internal auditor is not usually in that department, you do want a third party that can give you the audited financial statement, sign off on it, say everything's good, but you're looking for basically a review of the financial information to see where they're spending it.
I would, but it actually still would be fairly independent, because right now the funds stay with the Law Library Committee in a trust account, as I understand it. And it is not, that is not funds that the county has access to unless the Law Library Committee makes a decision to give any excess funds back to the county. So to a degree, we're asking for the county auditor to come in and do something that's not under their normal purview. But it would still save money if the county agreed to do it. And it's to their best interest because it goes for the citizens of the local county.
One more question, Chair. Like I said, I'm just kind of stuck on the whole audit and internal auditor. I forgive my ignorance. I'm an accountant, but I'm trying to think back to an internal auditor actually doing an audit, and I just can't think of that off the top of my head because it would have to be an external body that you're hiring. Typically, an internal auditor would review a report, maybe look at your controls, et cetera, make recommendations, verified internally, but that is only good for the internal body, not something that the external public would rely on. So,
my main concern, not to cut you off, my main concern, and maybe you can help me with this, is that it is specified in law what they can be spent for.
Mm-hmm.
I want to be sure it's being spent for the right thing.
Correct.
And so they look, okay, well, we spent it for this, and they're certifying that yes, they spent it for that.
Mm-hmm.
For example, did they pay funds to have a computer Westlaw generated legal research thing? Yes, they did. Okay, they're allowed to by law. So
Mm-hmm.
that may be kind of imprecise language for me.
No, I get where you're trying to get to. I'm just I would have to think about how to get you there, because when you're talking about an internal auditor complying with GAAP,
Mm-hmm.
I'd love my accountant friends at the society to kind of maybe make a recommendation at some point as we move along the process. I mean, I agree with you 100%, but just making sure that we're actually asking them to do something they can do.
Well, I would be happy if the committee, I'm a little pressed on time, if it could be moved out. I'm happy to get a little bit more precise for you, if you want.
Let me ask, see if I can clear or articulate what I think. I think what the gentleman, Representative, you're getting kind of hung on is when you use the word audit in your profession as an accountant, that's sort of a term of art. That's a audit that so a third party signs off on, and there's the fiduciary requirements that go with it. In a public auditing setting, you have to be a CPA firm in order to do those things. And I think in this case, and we don't have a staff attorney here. I think we have one or more attorneys on the committee, but I'm not sure that if we were to maybe properly do this, it mightn't say an annual review of its financials rather than an audit. Mm-hmm. And I think we're getting a little bit on terms of art
and especially since you are saying it has to be in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. That's my only thing. I would,
sure.
I would feel more comfortable. Not saying it's the exact wording, but review, maybe audit or review, to give them that flexibility. But you're saying that it has to show this information. And like I said, if you moved it and then maybe amended it at some point, maybe that's the proper way to do it. But
I wish I had the ACCG here.
Off the top of my head, Mr. Chairman, I would not object to striking internal auditor unless there is some really important reason to do it. We still have county accountant or a certified public accountant shall be made by the board. Would that address your concerns, Representative?
Let me just kind of keep us on the let me ask the question if I can, just so we can. If we were to strike internal auditor, and I ask Representative Wilkerson, from your knowledge as an accountant, and Representative Taylor Bennett, I'm going to ask you as an attorney. We may have others here. But if we say, or a certified public accountant shall be made by the board, I think you would also maybe have pause if the county accountant wasn't actually a CPA. Would that give you pause as well? Even though I think Representative Atwood is correct that the law library board is separate in organization from the county, so that would be like a third party. Mm-hmm. But what I'm hearing from you as being a profession in that profession is your concern is asking somebody to apply generally accepted accounting principles in uppercase audit world that may not be otherwise qualified to do that within the county. And what I believe Representative Atwood's at is, look, there is nothing now. We just want somebody to look it over and make sure they're spending it in the right place.
It's fairly simple. They're not going through detailed books and that sort of thing. I just want somebody saying, okay, could you spend this, for example, on probate court to do X, Y, and Z, and it's spelled out in statute.
Okay. Look, we've got a couple more questions. Let's get those if we can, and then we'll come back and see if we can find a way to get this done. I have number 28. I'm not sure Representative Frazier.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before we make that decision, we have to also think about Representative Atwood, the small counties that have law libraries that are still doing things by paper. So I understand what you're trying to do as it relates to, I work for the school system. We used to have external audits all the time, and we always brought in folks from outside to do it because that's just the way it's done. But in small counties that do have law libraries, are you saying that in the past we have never had audits done?
They may have.
And they have a budget, so the expenditures, nobody really knows where they are. That's really the purpose of this bill,
yes,
right?
Ma'am.
No accountability.
That is. Now, I'm not saying they haven't done an audit. Some have and voluntarily done it, but it's not required by law. But the ACCG actually came back to us, and that's a very good question because that's what they addressed. I had not thought of that, frankly. I said, well, you have pay to have an accountant, let's get it done. And they said, well, Representative, this would save us money because we already have those folks on staff that could come in, look over their shoulder, and would you object to us using somebody already applied by the county to do that? And I said, no, I don't. I just want somebody looking over it and making sure that the stuff's being spent right. A third party. So that's why that was added to address your question.
Okay, so Mr. Chairman, follow-up question. So in here you have three, I guess, an accountant, a CPA, like Representative Wilkerson. Mm-hmm. You have an external auditor. So you have the counties have an option on who they can get based upon, and because you do have your counties that don't have a lot of money, mm-hmm. and they can't just hire folks because we pass a law.
And even if the county doesn't want to provide one, the Law Library Committee could take their funds and use it to do an audit. So I'm trying to just give folks as much flexibility as I can. That's why
I wanted to say what I had to say before you all changed and maybe take one of these out, because that might not work for some counties, smaller counties, that fixed incomes, per se, that have a law library. Thank you.
Are there further questions? Further questions? Representative, I want to help us get this out, and I know you're on a time frame here. I do think it would probably behoove us, and my apologies to you as the author. We didn't have these questions come from the committee last thing. I'm certainly not going to put you off a week, but I'm going to ask the committee to allow me to sort of sound a suggestion, and if we can get something drafted, I'm going to ask us to get together tomorrow so we can get this, out, assuming, we vote affirmatively. But I do think it probably makes sense. And suggestions I would make and ask the author to consider come from Representative Harrell here is maybe change the word audit to review throughout that, just so, Representative Wilkerson, does that make sense from your standpoint? To review instead of audit, just to conduct a review?
Would that work?
That does, and also it gives them the flexibility, I guess, if it's a small.
Right, and I was going to go say, to listening to Representative Frazier, it gives us to right size it, if it will. I mean, why do a full gap review on something where they may have only had 15 or 20 transactions for the year? I mean,
there's not many, Mr. Chairman.
Right, I understand. Yeah, but we could do a review, and I would suggest, Representative, that also on line 16, that audit shall be conducted according. I would say, you're an attorney, sure, I'll leave it to you, but may include, or I'll leave that to your good offices, or so that we don't overburden. And if the gentleman can get that put together, and I'm going to need to lean on the committee here. We need to plan to try to get together. My hope would be we could meet, and I will find a room and notice it properly, but we would meet upon adjournment tomorrow. I think it would be brief somewhere in the Capitol, and get this out for the gentleman. Now, does anyone have any other questions that we might run across? Because I do think, especially given the bill we passed yesterday that said that excess funds could be turned back over to the county, I think it's very important that these things be looked at, because we wouldn't want the library board somewhere, if they thought they were going to be turning over the funds, to spend it in a place they weren't supposed to. So I think the audit, the gentleman's proposition for an audit, is even more important given the bill that passed the House yesterday.
Mr. Chairman, if I could ask one
Yes,
question.
Sir.
On line 14, would it be the sense of the committee, and I'll run this through Ledge Council too and bounce it off of them, such review or audit, would that work?
I think does that work for, I mean, again, I lean on the gentleman that's his profession. I think that works. Yes, sir.
Okay.
And if you could bring back to the committee, I don't believe audit is going to be per se defined. Mr. Bennett may be able to tell me different, but in this particular code section, I don't think there's a definition of what that is. I think it's probably a term of art, not carried forward into this section of code. But you, sir, are a learned attorney and can
I will
bring
find
us
that
up to
out,
speed on
Mr.
that.
Chairman. I'll find that out.
But I do want to say thank you to the committee members for raising those points. I know that the representative has a good measure here that'll help watch the monies of the state and get the money spent in the right place for our citizens. So if there's further input to the gentleman, please let him know. Did you have something?
I guess I want
Yes, sir.
make sure we're talking about in the title audit in line 14 and line 16 change. In the 14 16 it will say review and audit, and will the title in the title first page, line 2, will it say an annual review or audit, or will it just say annual review? What did we say we were going to do?
It's most likely, and I'll have to discuss it with Ledge
Okay.
Council, but it most likely will
That
say
would be 2, 14, and 16.
review or audit. Yes, sir. So,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
and I'll get, Mr. Chairman, I'll get that done very quickly, and I'll have committee substitutes for you by tomorrow morning.
Yeah, yes, sir. And just to be open and I don't know if we're broadcasting this meeting or not. It would be the intent of the chair to get us a room in the Capitol on adjournment tomorrow, and make all the members of the committee aware in case we go over lunch break. I'm going to make everybody aware, but we'll get this and we'll try to get the information out. If you could, Representative Atwood, if you could get, when they bill that sub for you and you're satisfied with it, if you could get them to email me a PDF of that, I would get Fallon in our office to email that PDF out to everybody so that we have that, so we can move this proposition along for you. That be the will of the committee.
We'll do it, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Is there anything further before the committee this afternoon? No further business before the committee. Will stand adjourned without objection. No objection. We are adjourned.